All right, it is official. Canada's 45th general election is underway. The party leaders vying to become Canada's next prime minister are each positioning themselves as the best option to strengthen Canada's economy and stand up to U.S. President Donald Trump. So when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time, that'll be the question that I will ask you. What are your thoughts on the federal election? Who do you like? Why or why not? And what is the ballot box question? And I can't help but think that it's going to be tariffs and Trump, and I just think that is on everybody's mind in this 51st state and all of that. Who is best positioned to guide us through these times, which are troubled? They're troubled times, unprecedented times, as they say. So who do you like? Why or why not? And what is the ballot box question? And how about natural resources development? This is something that the Premier of Nova Scotia is pushing for in a big-time way when it comes to uranium development and hydraulic fracturing. We know Danielle Smith and Alberta, they're saying now is the time to lift caps on emissions and to build infrastructure. And look, it's with the need to become more independent and less dependent on the United States, it's pretty evident that this is now in vogue, and some would say a knee-jerk reaction. So we'll ask you about that. What are your thoughts on natural resource development? And now is the time to utilize this in troubled economic times. And how about the tone of the campaign in a time when we're calling for national unity? Does that in part call for a toned-down approach to campaigning? Or will it just be as ugly as it always is, and perhaps even more so as this thing goes along? What are your thoughts on that? Some things that you can talk about, as mentioned, when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. But in the meantime, it is, of course, a Monday. That means we'll talk municipal politics for the next little bit with our councillors on the hot seat. Joining us in studio here is Nancy Hartling, District 13, Prospect Road, St. Margaret's. Nancy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right. And you came in, you say you were looking forward to coming in here, actually.
Oh, I can't wait. Like I already told you, this is like meeting Elvis in Graceland. I just love this show, and I get excited every time I get to come.
Wow,
so
that's very, very kind of you. Thank you so much. And Becky Kent, District 3, Dartmouth South, Woodside, Eastern Passage. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Todd. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for doing it. We appreciate your time very much. So I'll start with you, Nancy. Anything that you'd like to pass on to your constituents or listeners?
No, nothing in particular. Yeah, like I said, I'm hoping that we get some calls in about budget. There are still a few things left to talk about in budget, but I think that we're in a great place. So I'm hoping to field some questions about budget. But other than that, yeah, I think that everything's good.
Okay, Becky, how about you? Anything you want to pass along in regard to your district?
Yeah, in regard to my district, I'm going to encourage all my district residents who can vote to vote in the upcoming election. Or the current election, actually, right now. Democracy is at risk, I think, in the parts of the world, and I think that now more than ever, we got to make sure that we get someone who has been well researched and understood to lead the country.
Who might that be? Do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I'm leaning towards Carney for sure. I have never really appreciated what Poilievre brings to the table, and we'll wait to see what happens in the larger picture and larger scheme of things. But as you said at the beginning of the show, I think that the biggest thing on people's minds is Trump and the tariffs and our economic strength to withstand his just crazy thoughts.
Do you think that it's incumbent upon politicians at other levels of government to weigh in on who they support or not, or what are your thoughts on that, Becky?
Well, I don't have a thought. It doesn't matter to me. I chose to weigh in on it because I think that it's important. It's important for people to understand that it's important to vote. And so I don't mind. I've never really been one to shy away from that, but I can't speak for others.
Okay. Nancy, how about you? Did you something you want to weigh in on or no? That's fair if you do or you don't.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much, Councillor Kent, for bringing that forward. My goodness, talk about an important election. You really, really can't take away from the importance of this election. And I really echo Councillor Kent in saying that information will be key in in this election. Now more than ever, I think that we need to be very cognizant of the fact that there is not great information out there sometimes. So we need reliable sources. We need to get things from the source, or from the source. Pay attention, right? This is such a consequential election, so I really can't say enough how much people need to do their due diligence on this one, right. And keep on keeping on. Politics is meant to be a little bit messy, and there should be lots of dialogue. So I look forward to seeing all of it for sure.
Okay, give us a call if you'd like to chat with one or both the councillors. 902-405-6000. That's the way to do it. Again, 902-405-6000. So when it comes to budget, Nancy, where are we with budget?
Yeah, so I think we started off at a 7.6% tax increase, which I think everybody understood was not sustainable. We are in an affordability crisis. 7.6% wasn't good for anyone. Right now, we are actually at, I think, Becky, help me out, I think we're at 0.7%. A 0.7% increase is where we are right now, so under 1%. Having said that, we're not all the way done. We're headed back to budget this afternoon to see what more we can cut and what we need to put back in. I think that there are still a couple of things out there. I know that, I would like to see one or two things actually added to the budget. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so I would suggest that as well, the same thing as Councillor Hartling, that it's around 7%. We were working very hard to get it flat, and we were able to get there. And then the BOW list is the deciding factor quite often. It's that list of things that people either want to cut or want to keep. And so there's still a number of things on the table that need to get flushed out a little bit more and see who supports what.
And I will say this is my first budget process, but I can't say enough how good the information has been coming from staff. They do everything possible to make sure that we're executing, decisions based off of the very best information. And honestly, the amount of, work that goes into councillors making those decisions, right? We're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're making the best decisions possible. There's a lot of active debate that goes on for every single item. Yeah. And, regardless of where you fall on it, it's important that people realize that we are thinking about this long and hard.
All right, so just so that I get this clear, there's potentially a no hike to the rate, to the property tax rate this year?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where our goal is. I don't know if we'll land there, but that's our goal, and it's a good goal.
Yeah.
Okay. And what needed to be done in order to make that happen, Becky?
Well, there was a big shift in change around accessing reserve funds to help bring that down significantly, and that's new. We have the only reserve-specific fund that we still had was the library. All the other reserve funds are clumped in together, and they're accessed when they're needed. So the library had $10 million approved to be moved over to address the tax rate this year. And the biggest argument around it, and certainly was for me, is that these are extraordinary times. Our residents and all of our families in HRM, and I think across the province, really are struggling with the cost of living and the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of all the parts of maintaining cars and putting kids in the programs. It's just everything's gone up, and now is not the time to sort of sit on decisions that were made from the past that were, and there were councillors that didn't like the fact that we were pulling from the library. But at this point, we have extraordinary circumstances that I felt warranted it, as did enough of the council to approve that motion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I actually fell on the other side. I think that in a time when all decisions are hard, but listening to the CFO, just that the number of capital projects that we'll be paying for, on into the future, that we need to be really mindful of that. And, libraries are important. I actually voted against, but I don't dispute the overall tone coming from council that we are in extraordinary times, and we need to act very proactively if we're going to get through this together.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us if you'd like to chat with one or both the councillors. Again, 902-405-6000. $6,000 on the police budget. One of the more controversial issues was the armored vehicle. I'm not sure if that's the actual term for it or tactical vehicle, whatever terminology we're going to use. The price tag about $640,000. Nancy, what was your take on that?
Yeah, so the ARV, the Armored Rescue Vehicle, it's got a $600,000 price tag. I mean, at the end of the day, and I hope that was communicated really clearly for all those who were paying attention, this really wasn't a matter of, not because defund the police and that we have a loud proponent of folks who come to council and make sure that we're aware that detasking and defunding needs to be a priority. And truthfully, all of council is very appreciative of that. But in terms of our purchasing the ARV, that really came down to it being a labor decision. We have an emergency response team, and they need an armored rescue vehicle. Like I think that there's already, Becky, maybe you can help me out a little bit, but there was already a labor dispute ongoing because we didn't have one already. So this is us just really meeting our obligations. There's nothing political about it.
Becky, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I've always been a proponent for equipping and resourcing our police as we need them. This has been on and off the docket for council, as you know. The Armored Rescue Vehicle, which is the ARV, that's the full title of it, is very much around protecting and serving. Right. It's not just for protecting our police services, it's protecting the public as well. There are some significant differences between it and what we will be seeing in our I guess we already have an F-350 that has some protection, but there's significant differences in the two. And I have supported it. The Board of Police Commission, we vetted it strongly at a couple of different times in our schedules that we had chances to really dive deep into it. I'm still on the Board of Police Commissioners, no longer the chair, but I am on the board. And we are currently looking at, there is a draft in place that's going through some of the public safety folks first before it'll come to the Board of Police Commission for policy. And that's been a concern to the public, and we're already on that.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us to chat with our councillors. Again, 902-405-6000. Here's an email question while we wait some phone calls. This one from a daily listener says, can you ask the councillors these two questions? We have seen 2 deaths from mental health calls in the last couple of weeks while in police custody. Several years ago, HRM Council promised sobering centres that would be equipped with health professionals in cases where alcohol and drugs were involved. In addition, a cost analysis was completed for body cameras, which almost every city except Halifax has, for police and for the public protection. So the question is, 2 questions. What is the status of sobering centres, and what about body cameras?
So body cameras were part of the 20. Yeah. The body cameras were already a part of this year's budget, and that's already been approved as part of the HRP envelope. That is already, that's in the works.
When will they be wearing the?
So I think that there's a little bit of runway that goes into actually doing the work. The first is, and Becky, by all means, chime in at any time, but there's the purchase, the acquisition. There's also a big team. Like there's like 10 folks that need to manage the amount of data that comes in by body-worn cameras and cameras on vehicles, right? Like it's not a small amount of data, so I believe it's a team of 10. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Becky.
There's a large team of folks that will be looking at the handling of the data, the handling of the equipment, the handling of the training, the onboarding. There is a long runway on it. I don't have an exact date of when we would be looking at having them in the hands. The first step was the budget, and now that's approved, that piece, which was part of the capital approval. They can proceed with getting that information back to council and to the Board of Police Commission.
Okay, on the sobering centers, what can you tell the listener?
I believe there's one. We're not calling them that anymore.
No, they're called day centers.
Yeah, there's another. There's at least one. Nancy, are you familiar with how many of those are? They're not in District 3, so I'm not as familiar.
Yeah, so I know that, and again, that's already been approved from this budget. I believe they're calling it a day shelter. I think that I don't know all the details of what it includes at the moment. I do know that I think that there will be, first and foremost, a place where folks are able to keep their stuff, because I understand that that's a big challenge, right? Like if you're homeless and you're trying to get to a job, you're trying to do the things, where do you put your stuff? So as I understand it, they will include things like lockers. They will also include things like showers. They'll be those sorts of things. So a sobering center, I don't think is the right terminology, but there is a day shelter that, as I understand it too, it's also being cost shared with the province. And that's also been approved for the 2025 budget.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with our councillors. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with our councillors when we come back. All right, continuing our municipal politics on our traditional Monday spot with our councillors on the hot seat. Nancy Hartling here in studio, District 13, Becky Kent, District 3. Before we go to the phones, I wanted, you're talking about meeting the budget targets, and 3% of Halifax is still remains intact.
It does, yes.
Yeah, and Nancy, you said that you wouldn't support it if it weren't still in there, correct?
Oh no, there's no scenario where I would support, putting cuts to the climate action tax. I mean, I think that that's one of the most important pieces that HRM has. Climate change is real. Like we need to acknowledge that, and we need to support our municipality in ways so that we are, one, able to respond, and two, proactively prepare ourselves for what's coming. These, what used to be, 100-year storms are now part of, the landscape of climate in Nova It's right? Like that we need to be prepared. We need to be working proactively. It's not even just about the environment, it's about safety.
Yeah, did anybody float the idea of reducing that? Any councillors?
Yeah, well, it was initially part of the mayor initially tabled it as asking for a briefing report. Yeah. We were able to achieve, the mayor, and working with staff, was able to get it to 0% without having that included. But it's still on the ballot. I don't think that anybody would bring it forward. I don't think it would have support from council, even if somebody did.
Becky, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so the mayor put forward that motion, and I spoke to it that day that I thought that the motion itself overall was a good one to help bring the budget down to flat. I stand by the fact that I think it's a very difficult time for residents to provide for their families. Having said that, though, I'm glad that we did not have to dip into that. From my perspective, I wasn't looking to even consider a large portion of it, but if we had needed something to help offset it, I'm really pleased that staff worked really hard with the mayor and with the CAO to provide three options that did not include that. And I'm pleased where we're going now. I too want to put a shout out for staff, particularly under the leadership of Jerry Blackwell, because it's different now with even from the 2020 budget that we were thrown into when we first got elected, that we didn't get briefing notes until we were ready for the ballot list to come forward, and what we're getting now with this one is every time during the process up to now there was a new added item, they provided the briefing note as quickly as possible. That's been really helpful for us to keep tabs on where we are and each of us and what we're prepared to support. And I think that kind of information came forward for me to look a little closer at really what am I willing to cut and what am I not, to achieve that flat line that we were able to achieve very recently. And we'll continue to go to those briefing notes to get the information we need to support motions that might come forward now.
Yeah.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Aoife's giving us a call. Hello, Aoife.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
We're well.
Oh, good, thank you.
Good. I have two questions. First one is personal. I just got a tax in on our house tax, and it appears to be 3 times what it was last year. So we're not sure what's up with that. That's the first one. And then the second one is about, as an African who lives in Nova Scotia, we keep seeing one of the biggest groups of people who terrorize us, aka the police, keep getting increased funding left, right, and center. But when we ask for funding for things like mental health support, now the police are not trained to deal with mental health, so I don't know why they get funding for that. When they ask for new tanks, as if they're at war with us, they get that. Our body cams, they get that. But we never asked for that. So we are really concerned at the alarming rate. The city claims that Black Lives Matter, but they keep funding people who seem to have, or groups of organizations that seem to have no accountability for the repeated abuse that they've put on Black and brown people. And we're wondering if there's any plans to actually stop that and have the system of accountability for this group of apparent thugs who are funded by our money to harass us. Those are my two simple questions.
Okay, I'll take those if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll start with that.
Yeah.
So I'll speak to the first one, the mental health services. The mental health services are the space where we do not have the jurisdiction. The province has that. However, having said that, we have just, through a motion that I put forward during the budget, we have approved funding for a mental health crisis intervention team, which would involve specialists in the health programs and agencies in the community to respond to mental health crises instead of the police. That would be an example of an alternative model that we are looking at, and there will be others coming through the public safety office. We have a new commissioner that is overarching now both fire and police, and be looking at strategic priorities as we go forward. The Board of Police Commission has wholeheartedly endorsed looking at new models for delivery in keeping with some of the defund report recommendations. I've already spoke to the importance of what I felt was important for the police funding towards the rescue vehicle and such. I don't necessarily have the same opinion as far as the service delivery. I can't argue that there has been a disproportionate number of historical pieces around African and Nova Scotian and people of color in our province, but I think that the Wortley report had brought those forward, and our police services, we've held them to task in making sure that they are accommodating those. And so that would be that piece. The tax bill piece, I have a question for you in relation to that. You say you think it has gone up by about 3 times the amount. Did you buy a new house? Did it start? And which would have been releasing the cap on that?
It was bought in January last year.
Yeah. So, and when you buy a new house, you are then the cap that would have been on the amount from the previous owner, which you probably received during your bill of your negotiating. You may have seen the tax bill for that. That would have been under what we call the property tax cap, and it would have only been very small incremental increases over year, but the total value and price of that house would not have been fully taxed on. Once it's sold, that cap is removed and it starts back at the high price. And that would be why you're now seeing something that's quite large compared to what you thought it might have been when you bought it.
I see. Okay.
I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, the tax one helps. The other one, I think that even the current chief of police, their responses to anti-black racism have been alarming.
The current one, we've just had him a little while. Yeah.
And that's Becky, maybe it would be really helpful to talk about that, because we actually do have a new police chief commissioner.
Yeah, our police chief changed last year. We now have Don McLean, who has just been over a year or so. He was acting chief while we were looking for the new chief, and he's a person of color, and he's been with the force for over 30 plus years. And
I'm very aware. I'm just saying that his responses to black people have been alarming.
Okay, well, I don't have any information that you're sharing today to suggest the what you're talking about, but I think maybe you can write a letter to the board or to the police chief himself and ask, what his plan is to address some of that.
I will do that.
Okay, Ufo, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us if you'd like to chat with our counselors. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, it's our counselors on the hot seat. Here in studio is Nancy Hartling, District 13, Prospect Road, St. Margaret's. On the line is Becky Kent, District 3, Dartmouth South, Woodside, Eastern Passage. And we get some room for you as well. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Jeff's giving us a call. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning.
Hi there. Go ahead.
I just had a question. I'm Prospect Road, and regarding the development at HEC there, that huge development going in, it has several concerns and just two questions. First of all, I took my two children from Peggy's Cove out to try to find somewhere nice to walk, and traveled through in behind Heck there through the watershed area.
Yep.
And it is one of the most beautiful places in the province, in my opinion. It's like Victoria Park in Truro. There's waterfalls, there's a winding river, and I mean, it's for sure park material. So I'm wondering, first of all, have you ever walked out there to see how beautiful it is? And second of all, is there anything going to be in place with this nightmare cluster development there that is going to help preserve this area?
Yeah, Jeff, so thank you so much for the question. So just so you know, I walk Long Lake all the time. I'm very familiar with Long Lake, and I wholeheartedly agree. Just so you know, the HEC development isn't meant to, go into Long Lake. It's there is still a lot of unanswered questions about the building for HEC. I don't even have a timeline at the moment. I don't know whether you were involved in the community consultation around the buildings at HEC. That happened way back in September. The What We Heard report still hasn't even come out yet. To my knowledge, there is no active plans to get that underway anytime soon. But yeah, I absolutely and wholeheartedly appreciate what you're saying. And I think that when we think about environmental concerns, I think that we need to think even bigger than just Long Lake. The Western Common is on the other side of the Prospect Road, and that needs to be protected too, not just from, when it's all done, but in terms of the development. There are some really important water courses and watersheds that need to be considered, and that all needs to be a part of the process. But in terms of... Yeah,
I mean, the watershed is one of the most important, obviously.
It is.
But I just watched, the Bears Lake Mystery Walls. Right now, if you go up there, that area has been half destroyed. Like, there's signs up that say you can't metal detect or dig or anything to preserve it. But they basically bulldoze half of it down for an empty office building and a storage unit that's sitting up there. So that's just my concerns. I'll leave it. I appreciate your input. And
you mean further up the Prospect Road?
It's the Bears Lake Mystery Walls. It's well known if you look at it online.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought that you meant. I'm sorry. I thought that you meant in District 13. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about in Bears Lake. But yeah.
I guess that's not your district. Yeah.
No, it's not.
But yeah, I mean, just the not only the nightmare of how much burden that's going to put on all of our community on the Prospect Road with the traffic snarls, where there's only really two routes to get out of there, the highway or the Bay Road. I mean, that is just a nightmare.
Oh.
Plus, I'm just mostly concerned that it's going to destroy that beautiful infrastructure that we have there. So rare to have something so beautiful. So
it is.
I appreciate your attention towards the subject.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I hope that
and just
moving forward, you keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up a bit more, I think that there's widespread agreement. Certainly, Ian Rankin with the province. Keep in mind that the Prospect Road is a provincial road. That the HEC development doesn't really make sense where it is right now, with respect to transportation and transit. The Prospect Road is, one lane in either direction, and so St. Margaret's Bay. How are you supposed to put a development with as many doors as Truro right in behind Long Lake there at Exhibition Park. Yeah, like in order for any of that to make sense, I think that there's widespread agreement that we need an exit onto the 103. There's lots of things that really need to make it make sense before a development that size could ever really happen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. I'm glad it's on your radar, and hopefully moving forward it stays there.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Carlos, hello.
Hello. Hi. Thanks. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I had 2 comments. Well, actually, a question. The first one related because there was just a caller, and they was talking about the police. And I, as a non-Caucasian person, I'm pretty happy with the work of the police. The only concern that I have is that Halifax still has a above national average of violent crime. And my question to the councillors, have you asked the chief what can we do to bring this down to at least a lower level than a national average? Because we still see problems of violent crime above like national average.
What a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll start this one. Yes, we ask the chiefs quite regularly at the Board of Police Commission those. I know council does as well. We are, attempting to equip him with the resources he needs to make sure that he has the appropriate number of human resources out on the beat, and of course in the investigation units, along with our RCMP integrated service there. The challenge we have right now, and this chief came in right around the time that he would have seen a significant growth in the city, and with growth comes new people into the area. And I know that their guns and gangs folks are working very hard. There's been more recently some significant infiltration into some of those crime groups, and so I'm encouraged by what he has planned. Also, we have as well. Again, the new Commissioner of Public Safety, Bill Moore, is a former HRP officer, and he works with the overarching of police bylaw and fire, and his main goal is strategic priorities such as that, strategic planning forward. And as we grow, and we're growing significantly quite fast, that there needs to be some very specific strategy in how they go forward. I can't speak to that specifically because that kind of stuff would come through the chief, and much of it would be in camera, but I can tell you that we're asking those questions.
Okay, great. Because in my view, yes, the police need the full support to deal with this issue, right? Because we have somehow to bring this average of violent crime lower than like national average. And I thank you for your answer. I have another question, if that's okay. It's about discretionary funds. That's the funds that every councillor receives. Discretionary funds, right? And every councillor gets about $100K, and you can pick NGO, that you can offer some projects, help. Well, last year, while I myself was running for the councillor, I found a few NGO that was asking me and say, look, I like the person now in power because he gave us $30,000 for this and that. And I'm just wondering, are you able to check how discretionary fund is being used? Because are they given these funds, and is it in a proper manner? Do they ask like receipts for projects? Because it felt like as if I was back in Latin America where public fund is being used for a political support.
Yeah, no, that there are very specific rules around the discretionary. There is a pool that is specifically it's called district capital funds That's the larger fund that you're talking about, and there's very specific rules about what we can use it for and what we cannot. When we have an application or a group that reaches out to us, the first thing we have to do is have that vetted through the regulations that we have in place. And once it passes that test, then we are able to contribute in some way. The discretionary funds, which is a very small amount, it's $5,000 that we're able to give to some of the smaller groups, like a hockey team here and there, or a community barbecue. Those tend to go out in smaller amounts, $200 or $300 at the most. Not in every case. Each councillor has the right to pick that themselves, but they're usually associated to some form of activity that's happening very quickly. So it's easy to see that those funds have been used. Then there's the part of that fund as well is our it's called ads and promotions, and it allows us to support groups that ask for us in advertising. And again, that has rules around it.
Yeah. Who has the oversight that a councillor is not?
The finance department would.
And just so you know, as a councillor, I've never touched a dime. I believe it. Yeah, it doesn't. It sounds kind of like there might be something under the hood there. I can tell you with a high level of certainty. I have somebody to help me out. My councillor support. Every time that I get a request and I think that it has merit, I immediately include her in the conversation, and then and so that gets vetted. And again, there are very strict criteria around who we can contribute to. And again, we aren't, our pockets aren't that deep. If I'm being, I get asked all the time, like, can you rebuild my park with that? Yeah. I don't have close to the kind of money that it would take to move the needle. But it's for much, much smaller projects.
Okay, Carlos, thanks for the call, pal.
Okay.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with our councillors when we come back. All right, continuing with our councillors. Nancy Hartling here in studio. Becky Kent on the line, 902-405-6000. Chris is giving us a call. Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Todd and ladies.
Hi.
Good morning.
You've indicated that you're down to now with the budget a 0.7% tax rate increase. Is that correct?
No, that would be tax impact on the impact on the bill, the resident's bill. It would be 0.7%, not the rate.
And we're not done yet. Yeah, there's still opportunities to cut.
Okay, so just to be clear, the actual tax dollars that I as a taxpayer will pay, as it stands right now, will increase by only 0.7%.
Correct. If that's where we are. I can't remember the exact number, but that would be the inclination in that. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, we're not done yet. Just to kind of say like that, you don't get to take that to the bank yet, but we're doing our best to achieve zero.
So is it likely that it will stay around that, or it could go lower, or do you think it might go a little higher than that? Or is that a hard question?
It really could go either way. We are trying. I know I supported the motion of the mayor to bring it to a flat rate, knowing that it could go a little higher or a little lower. It's unlikely to go lower. We have a lot that we have to deliver on at this stage. So the goal, keeping it flat, is lofty, but I think we can get there. As Councillor Hartling said, there's still a lot that people may want to bring forward.
Well, if you're down to that, and from how you're explaining it to me, I think you've done a very good job.
Well, thank you.
And Todd, that may sound strange coming from me.
Yeah.
But actually, it is it's difficult for a lot of people to understand it. I get it fairly well, but we have an increase in assessments. So in effect, what you guys have done, if you're achieving in around the 1% net increase in dollars paid, you've actually cut the tax rate then, because we have had an assessment increase, correct?
Yeah, we've cut it. Actually, it's been cut I think every year since we were in council, when I came back at 2020, and because of that exact thing, the assessments have gone up, and the value of homes, of course, that's what that equates to, and the markets. So yeah, what's happened. You got it.
Well, if that's the case, then I take my hat off to you, and you've done a good job. Usually I call and I kind of complain about stuff.
No, you don't kind of complain. You fully complain. Then that's okay, Chris.
Come on now, Todd. That's part of your show. And besides, the listeners out there would be very
good. I agree.
They'd be very disappointed if I didn't complain.
That's right. As a matter of fact, I'm disappointed right now.
Well, geez, what can I do?
Special, Chris.
well, you should. I do. In all seriousness, I commend you guys if you have been able to do that, because that's what myself and many people have been advocating for a long time.
If I could just say really quick too.
Yeah.
Just a quick shout out to the mayor, because he was the one who tabled the original motion with the option to get us to zero. So again, mayor and also staff, like the CFO and the CAO. I can't say enough about how much work goes into getting us to where we are currently.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But you guys all have to take and share the credit, and as you would the blame in other cases, because you all have a vote on it. One quick thing, if I can, on this cap, the way you were explaining it, it often goes unsaid that when you buy a property, you're going to have a tax increase if it's a capped property that you're buying.
Yeah.
After that first year of ownership, you as well are included under the cap. Your rate going forward, or your assessment, is also capped. A lot of people don't realize that, but that is the case. It's a catch-up. So I guess my point is that a lot of people complain, I have to pay more property taxes than the guy before me. But the guy before you bought it 30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're buying it today, and when you're factoring in your purchase of your house, you're looking at what the taxes today is going to be for you, not what it was 30 years ago or for the other guy. But you will be protected against spikes and increases because you will be capped after that first year.
So you're a fan of the rate cap, I take it?
I am. I mean, my property's capped, but if you look at it, approximately 65% of all residential properties in the province of Nova Scotia are capped.
Yeah, there.
I would be more in favor, and I know there's no way of doing it easily, and people have talked about different ways of collecting property taxes, but I think it should be a combination, a system that's combined of the actual cost to HRM of providing goods and services to districts, and coupled with the fact that does the person that we're throwing this at, do they have the ability to pay? What is their ability to pay? The little old lady who's living her last few years in a home in the South End, let's say, I live in the South End, so you use the South End as an example. Her parents might have had the home, she might have inherited it, she may have a very, very meager income, and she can't afford to pay $8 or $10 or $12 or $15,000 a year in property taxes. And there's many properties in the South End that are paying more than that. We know that. So that should be factored into it if there was any way, based upon a person's ability to pay.
Okay, Chris, I'm gonna move on. Thanks for the call.
That's okay. Thanks.
Okay, all right, take care. Jeffrey, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Sure.
I'm just inquiring about the logistics and the infrastructure out in the Hammonds Plains area for another egress road for the Whitebird subdivision. Like, right now, I can count 4 apartment buildings that are built around the area. If there's another fire like it was the other year, I'm not getting out.
And so I'm not sure what the question is. Are you asking us if there is a plan for it?
Yes. Is there another plan for another egress road to the 101 or to the Lucas Road for infrastructure for the Whitebird subdivision?
Whitebird?
White Hill, yes, White Hill.
White Hill? Yeah, I think we have one that's I think coming forward for
Westwood.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with this one. This is a better question specifically for the councillor of the area. I'm not familiar enough to say whether or not that's being discussed.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Like all these apartment buildings, they're being built, like that huge complex is going to be built, Lucas Road, Hammonds Plains Road. Down Pockwalk, there's at least 3 more big multi-use apartments that are being built. Like, all this development is being done, but the infrastructure is not changing, and I don't understand why.
I think that it is something that is being looked at in the overall approach to how we can mitigate the impact of large fires, particularly
Yeah.
the forested areas.
Yeah.
We would find that scenario in every district around, and particularly those in the rural areas. And there's more development slated to go out into some of those areas as well, not just the ones in Hammonds Plain. So I believe strongly. I'm pretty sure that that's part of the overarching plan.
Yeah,
it's just we can't specifically speak to one particular area.
Yeah, I know that was
at this point.
That was and still is a really big piece of the puzzle. That moving forward, that fire emergency and egress get built into how we arrange neighborhoods. That person exists now in planning and development.
Okay, cool. Yeah. But I mean, God help anyone, trying to get out of these subdivisions when there's a fire, because we're not getting it.
Okay.
That's not way possible.
Okay, Jeff. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Becky Kent. Appreciate it as always.
My pleasure. Thanks, Todd. Thanks for you and the great show you have.
Okay, great stuff. Nancy, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, do you have as much time and fun as you were expecting?
Oh, always.
That's great. Nancy Hartling, District 13, Prospect Road, St. Margaret's. Now we have some time for you. Give us a call. What is on your mind today? 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into on this Monday? Again, 902-405-6000. Canada's 45th general election is underway. The party leaders vying to become Canada's next prime minister are each positioning themselves as the best option to strengthen Canada's economy and stand up to U.S. President Donald Trump. So the questions, who do you like, why or why not? Pretty simple stuff. Who do you like, why or why not? Or maybe you don't like any of them. Maybe none of the above is your answer. And what is the ballot box question? And I think it's pretty clear in my opinion anyway. Maybe perhaps you'll have a different opinion. I'm sure some of you do. But tariffs and Trump. To me, this is the number one issue. How do you deal with Donald Trump, and how do we handle tariffs, and how do we respond to tariffs? Because it's not only the United States where tariffs are impacting us, it's China now with 100% tariff on canola and seafood, 25%. So tariffs are in vogue now. And we need to respond and diversify markets, or whatever strategy we employ, we have to get it done. So to me, this is the number one issue. How do you deal with Trump, and how do you deal with tariffs? And not far behind that, of course, are natural resource development. What do we do about natural resources? Because there's a lot of move afoot now to become more independent and less dependent on the United States in particular, and that means diversifying energy markets. That means pipelines and energy infrastructure. And what are your thoughts on that, folks? We know here in the province of Nova Scotia, Premier Tim Houston has a big push on natural resource production, including uranium mining and lithium and fracking. So what are your thoughts on natural resource development and in response to these tariffs and our independence and bolstering our independence? And what type of tone do you think the campaign should strike? Because there's a lot of call for national unity now, which doesn't really speak well to those who are campaigning and want to complain about the government of the day, of course. So what about tone? How do you strike a patriotic tone while being critical of the government of the day? 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Again, 902-405-6000. Darren, hello.
Hi. I had my own topic, but I just want to talk about what you just said about Nova Scotia and being a resource province. I don't think Nova Scotia is a resource province. We're the second most populated province in the country. We have a ton of private wells. We're sitting on a glacial rock, so I don't think there's a hell of a lot of oil sitting under us. And the amount of fresh water that's required to frack is obscene, and we already have water shortages. So I think Houston's way off on this. We should be focusing on finance and technology and clean energy and tourism and film where the resources should be left to the provinces that have hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of uninhabited land, not Nova Scotia.
Okay.
But what I wanted to talk about was Danielle Smith.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but she's a trader, and her own audio and interview with Breitbart, she said that the longer this tariff dispute goes on, politicians posture, and it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. Mm-hmm. So I would hope that we could put things on pause, is what I've told administration officials. Let's just put things on pause so we can get through an election. I think that's a clear instance of.
Well, she said it on the record, so she tried to walk it back, but it's clearly on the record, right? How do you walk that back?
You can't, and that's soliciting foreign interference into election, because she didn't say permanently. She said until we get through this election.
That's true. That's true.
The Liberals. I encourage everyone to file a complaint with Elections Canada or call the RCMP in Alberta and make a criminal complaint against her, because this is unacceptable.
Darren, do you feel as though that might be a little extreme filing? Why do you suggest it would warrant a criminal complaint?
Because she admitted to asking administration officials to adjust their policy towards Canada so as to help her preferred candidate. Yeah. Is that not election interference?
Well, and again, I'm not well versed enough to know whether or not that qualifies as criminality. That's all.
Well, it's a conspiracy between a foreign agent and us, and it's Section 45 of the Criminal Code of Canada.
Well, if we're going to go down that road, then what about all the Liberal MPs who also conspired with foreign entities and their names that never came forth?
I don't know. Whatever that's been investigated, but this is on the record. I've heard Danielle's voice.
Yeah,
she committed election interference in her own words, and it's recorded.
Right,
you can't walk that back.
Right. Okay. All right, Darren. Thanks for the call.
Thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello. Hi, Tim. Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Are you okay?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead.
Listen, it's been a lot of talk the last 24 hours about the election. I haven't heard too much about anyone on a fixed income or increasing or enhancing the pensions for pensioners. But I do know there's a lot of promises floating around, and I hope everyone encourages to ask their elected officials a lot of questions, because this is no doubt an extremely important question that affects not just Nova Scotia, but Canada as a whole. And if we don't get it right, what will it look like after the fact? So, at the end of the day, there's no shortage of issues, and I look forward to being educated on a number of them, and on April the 28th, voting accordingly.
Do you have anybody who you're supporting at this time, Tim?
Not right now, because I think they're all going to tell you what you want to hear versus what they'll do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just think we have to make an educated and informed decision.
Okay, so you're undecided at this point?
Correct.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I'm just wondering if you or any of your listeners have heard any update on the death of the sailor Gregory Alplin on January 24th in the Bedford Basin, because I'm thinking it's been 60 days, exactly 2 months today, and they said the investigation, it will continue, and I haven't heard anything in the news. I've looked online. I can't find anything, any update from the original posting, and I'm thinking that's kind of odd, don't you think?
Well, I'm not sure that I would want to say that's kind of odd, because I don't know how long it takes for these types of investigations to pan out. But to answer your question, I'm not aware of any updates, Sarah, but I certainly understand your concern. But again, I don't know if this is norm for it to take this type of time frame. I'm not sure what the investigation entails, so I can't really comment anything more than that, other than I don't know of any update.
Okay, well, I think most people know that a rigid hull inflatable boat, this military one, 24 feet long, 2 people in it.
Yeah.
Those things are pretty they say that they're almost impossible to capsize.
Mm-hmm.
And a sailor with 19 years experience, I mean, I'm sure that those training exercises that they were apparently doing at Friday night at 10 o'clock, I mean, I'm sure that they'd be wearing life jackets or some form of personal flotation device. How one person, and I'm thinking just 2 people out there out of the, you'd think that it'd be maybe, I don't know, 12, 10, like it couldn't be just one boat,
right?
2 people.
Yeah.
It just seems fishy to me.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering if anybody knows how to or where I can go to get some information.
Okay, Sarah. Listen, I can't help you other than I understand why you would be concerned, and we'll look for some detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Hello, Mark.
Oh, hi, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So first, I mean, I wasn't going to say this, but if anyone, I mean, Darren, and I respect his opinions, but he's definitely being a drama queen, if I can say that, and I mean that nicely. Mm-hmm. If anyone needs to be arrested, it's Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. They're absolute traitors. I think you know which way I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for a self-made man, someone who actually cares about this country, and is not Justin Trudeau's one of his best friends. I'm going to vote for Pierre Poilievre and not Carbon Tax Carney. And he's a liar and a fraud. And that's who I'm going to vote for. And I'll just let other callers go ahead. All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Who do you like in this upcoming election? Why or why not? What is the ballot box question? What about the campaign tone? National unity, natural resources, whatever else you'd like to get into. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Thanks. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. The 45th general election in this country is underway. Who do you like? Who do you not like? Maybe you don't like any of them. Maybe you have an opinion. Maybe you're able to be swayed. What are your thoughts on all of this? What is the ballot box question as well? Tariffs, Donald Trump, natural resource development, campaign tone, national unity, 902-405-6000. Hello, Donna.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm all for Pierre Poilievre. I turned against Trudeau when he was prime minister, and a lot of the same MPs are back with Carney. And I also have been reading up a bit on Carney. And there's a guy named Peter Foster. He was a columnist for the National Post or whatever. But anyway, in 2020, Mark Carney wrote a book. Did you know that? And it's called Values, VALUE /S. And in the book, and it describes the system that Carney wants to build. And Foster calls the book a technocratic dictatorship justified by climate alarmism. And anyway, I will not vote for Mark Carney. He's a smooth talker. That's fine. I like Pierre. He's about the economy and helping, Canadians and whatnot. But that's, and I'm worried about the economy. And even this morning, you had somebody on there, a man called about buying a new place, and his tax bill went crazy. Mine's $1,400 more than what it was last year. I just bought a new place. I just about fainted when I got my tax bill. And not only that, I got another bill in the mail, too, from the federal government. Notice that my dental plan that I have to pay every month for, not only me, but all kinds of other people with that were in the military, government, whatever. And we're paying more. Ours has all gone up. And lo and behold, on Friday, they announced that all the people now, 18 to 24, are going to get a free plan. I can't get the free plan, and anybody else that has the government plan, because they said we already have a plan, even though we pay for it, and the other people that are getting it don't pay $5.
Well, there's an income threshold there, so it's not everybody. I think it's a household income of less than $90,000.
I'm within the threshold.
Okay.
And I called and they said, no, sorry, you can't get the plan because you already have a plan.
Yeah. So is that necessary? Is that, Donna? Would you like to see nobody with dental care who don't have access to a plan?
No. But what I'm saying is, I'm in the threshold.
I know that.
I'm below way below the threshold.
Yeah, but you do have a plan, right? You do have a plan, right?
Yeah, but I pay a monthly fee. I pay $100 a month.
Yeah.
Is what I'm paying for me. There's just me.
Right.
And why should, and that's for my medical and dental.
Well, you say why should, so you don't support people who don't have access to a dental plan having any dental coverage in this country?
No, I'm not.
Well, that's what you just said. That's what you just said.
Okay, but why should I pay? And I'm in the money threshold
because you're lucky enough to have a plan. Okay, you're lucky enough to have a plan, Donna.
I'm lucky. What do you mean, lucky enough?
You're lucky to have a dental plan. Anybody who has a dental plan, it's $100, and you got to pay into it, but you're lucky to have it. There are people out there in this country who are seniors and others who have no dental plan and no coverage at all, and their teeth are rotting out of their head. And
I know, but these people have. I'm in the money threshold. Like let's say I'm on a fixed income.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's just me.
Yeah.
So people that I know that make more than I do get the plan for free. They do not have to pay a monthly plan.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, Donna, I get it. You have to have some rules, and it's nothing. No plan is perfect. But look, I think that providing dental care for people is a good thing, and it's never going to be perfect.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that the way that it was put out is ridiculous. I can't get it because I have a plan. And if I cancel my plan, even though I'm in the threshold of way below what you have to make, I can't get the plan. What I'm saying is, why should my next door neighbor, who makes more than me, get the plan, and I have to pay?
Well, first of all, how do you know your next door neighbor makes more than you? I don't know how much people make who live next door to me.
I've talked to people and what they make. Anyway, it's ridiculous. And my plan has gone up.
Yeah.
And my sister and her husband have it, and theirs is doubled. Theirs has gone up twice as much. It's doubled more than mine. Our plans have all gone up to cover the people that are getting it. So there you go. I do agree that the dental plan is a good thing. It's wonderful, and I think they're giving kids a check for $784 or whatever. I don't believe in that. I think the kids should, because how do you know that the parents are going to take the kid to the dentist? The money should go. The kids should go to the dentist, and the dentist send the bill in.
Yeah. Okay,
thanks. And that way you know that the child is getting to the dentist.
Okay, thanks for the call, Don. I appreciate it. Take care. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Hello, Jordan.
Hey, Todd.
Well, you?
Oh, not too bad. I want to touch on the election there.
Sure.
Definitely won't be voting for Liberal, voting Conservative. Glad to hear other people are calling in and saying the same. I would vote PPC if they had enough support, but they don't have that just yet.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard, so we just don't care about the climate stuff anymore?
Pardon me?
Did I not just hear that Nova Scotia removed all the subsidies from Teslas?
Yeah, so what's the story here on the Tesla one? Houston...
They just removed all the subsidies that we were giving out to buy a Tesla. So apparently the climate.
Yeah, no, I saw the story. I saw the story this morning here somewhere. It's not not as simple as you're putting it.
Okay, I just.
Here we go. No more rebates for Teslas. So Nova Scotia has become the latest province to scrap electrical vehicle rebates for Tesla due to the CEO's association with the U.S. administration and its trade war in Canada. So in other words, you had a rebate with $2,000 to $3,000 per purchase, but if you're buying a Tesla, it's not applicable.
Exactly. So if I want to help save the climate and save the world by buying an electric car, because Elon Musk, these people don't like Elon dealing with Trump, I don't get no rebate.
If you want to, I guess if that's how you want to word it, I guess that's how it is. I suppose
that's what it is. They just said they removed the rebates because of Elon.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how I want to word it. That's what they said.
Well, you've got other options, right? You've got other options other than Tesla.
So it just doesn't make sense because they don't like Elon. I can't get a Tesla with the rebates.
Well, it's not like that. You don't like Elon. It's the way in which Elon Musk has conducted himself and the way the way that he is slashing jobs in the United States, and so it's not just don't you like him. It's about his policies.
Canada. That's got nothing to do with Canada. He's doing that in America. So why are we all up in a huffy puff because Elon's doing something in America? It's like if he cured cancer, will we just say no? Don't want to deal with him. He's with Trump.
I don't think we have any worries about him curing cancer. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's not my point. I'm making a point.
It's a ridiculous point, Jordan.
He's got a great product out there, the Teslas. They're great for the environment, and now it's asking people not to purchase them because of that. That's just like pulling the liquor off the shelves in the liquor store after we already paid for it all. Yeah. But how dumb is that? Why not sell it, get the money, and not import it? I said this before. Yeah. It's foolishness stuff, right? But anyway, I just wanted to.
Well, I hear you. Listen, it's should government, and you raise a valid question. You raise a valid point. Should government take a stand against somebody in a foreign country because of the policies in a foreign country? And in this particular case, it's in vogue now. To cancel Starlink deals because Trump and Musk are attached at the hip, right? So he's considered to be part of this threat against Canada and this existential threat. So the theory is hurt him where it hurts, hurt him in his pocketbook, hurt him with his business. You don't agree with that?
But I don't think. I get it, but I don't think it's going to hurt him much. And if we care so much about the climate and the environment, we should be looking at other ways to hurt them rather than not enticing people to buy more electric vehicles.
Well, I mean, but that said, Jordan, people can still buy Tesla if they want to, and there are lots of other options other than Tesla.
But Tesla's the top brand. Like you look at the cars around, Tesla is the go-to. It's a really nice car. If I was to go get an electric vehicle, it would be a Tesla, but you know what I mean? I'm not going to get one until the rebates come back on.
Yeah, I get your point, and I think it raises a broader question. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. What are your thoughts on all of this? We'll get some open lines for you. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Brian, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well, you?
Good. All right, so I'm going to try to get to the point. In the end, everyone is entitled to vote for whoever they feel is a better person. But I think the important part, and it's often missed, is to be sure that your vote there's some education behind your vote. We've already had an individual come on here and complain about her property tax. And people should know by now that your federal politics don't really affect your property tax. It's not decided by federal politicians. That's decided by your municipality. People should know this by now. The other issue I have is, personally, I'm going to vote Liberal only because I think Carney is a better choice to stand up against Trump. I'm usually more left-leaning. Misconception often is that Liberals are left-leaning. They're more central nowadays than they used to be. But the idea that Poilievre is a self-made man out for the people, he's been a politician his entire life. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he knows the difference between a hammer and a screwdriver. Mm. The other thing, this hasn't been brought up in the show, but I've seen a lot on social media, is this weird conspiracy theory of people being like, well, hold up. Why does all of our money have Mark Carney's name on it? What sort of connection? Why is this a thing? And it's because he was the governor of our Bank of Canada when those bills were printed. People should know this, but they don't. I think a lot of people slept through civics class.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that conspiracy theory about the money, to be honest with you. First I've heard of it.
It's a TikTok thing. It's like, you could just ignore it, but there are people out there that actually believe this.
Yeah, fortunately, I'm not on TikTok, so I hear you.
To correct you, Just to correct you, it's not unfortunately. It's fortunately you're not on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, I'm not on TikTok. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Dylan, hello.
Hi, I just had a little point to add about the caller who was talking about Elon Musk there. The reason they stopped the rebates on the Teslas was actually because he came out and said that he also doesn't believe that Canada is a country when Trump was saying that. So I just wanted to add that point.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely that's absolutely why. It's about the fact that Elon Musk is tied to the hip with Donald Trump, and he's considered an enemy, really, to use that type of terminology, to this country at this point by many, by of course not everybody, but by some, by many, he's considered to be an adversarial.
Yeah, 100%. And if he's attacking or if he's trying to the country, I fully support it. It just feels like though some of the stuff that they've been doing during this, like the caller said, like taking the alcohol off the shelves. I guess like stop buying the American alcohol, but there's no point not selling it if you already have purchased American alcohol. You know what I mean? Some of the stuff that they do just seems like it's more of like a statement than actually doing anything to fight against.
Well, the Tesla thing is a statement as well, right? In the end, it's although it might impact his bottom line, but it's more or less a statement.
Yeah. And, that's basically all I have.
Okay, thanks for the call, Dylan. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Hi, James.
Hi, thanks. Calling about federal politics in Halifax.
Yeah.
I just, elections, the gurus say they are either hope or fear. And so the Liberals are now running, well, in Halifax, and I'm being very particular, but that's, I guess, the listenership. The Conservatives are not really in the game. I follow the websites closely. So hope would be what Jagmeet Singh said yesterday about pharmacare, dentacare, etc. Fear is the Liberals with the Trump is coming, you can only trust us, and Carney is your man. Anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out, but I just hope that people realize that, I guess to put it bluntly, whether you vote NDP or Liberal, you're going to keep Conservatives out of power, but if you want hope, you need to vote NDP.
Why do you say, what's the NDP done to inspire you to that they're the party of hope?
Well, the recent accomplishments. Pharmacare, dentacare, standing up for women's rights. It's endless, but I mean, you're a smart guy, Todd.
But James, but what I'm saying is that Jagmeet Singh people. I mean, you're in the vast minority here. You realize, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think their polling numbers are under 10%, and Jagmeet Singh is considered to be a pretty weak leader and might not even win his own seat. So it just when people call me and tell me that the NDP is their party of choice, I just try and figure out why.
No, fair comment. I did watch his presentation yesterday.
Yeah.
Historically, the NDP has been the party that has pushed whichever government, and of course, often they've been in minority, always been in minority, pushed the other parties to do things that help real people. And I could go on endlessly. I won't. But so I think we need that social conscience in Parliament. And if it turns out to be Liberal minority with NDP, the balance of power again, we're going to get more good things for real Canadians, like pharmacare, dentacare, etc.
Okay, James.
And now of course, the emphasis is on affordable housing.
Yeah.
So that's the next frontier.
Okay, James, what about people who feel as though that's not going to meet the moment because what's happening right now south of the border and tariffs and Donald Trump is more important than that's the real ballot box question at this point? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree that that's the ballot box question, but I guess you can have a second question in the back of your head. Okay, I'm going to vote for the person I think that is most able to stand up against Trump, but I'm also going to, or the party, but I'm also going to vote for a party that will help my real day-to-day situation.
And you feel Jagmeet Singh checks both those boxes?
I do. He's obviously spoken out very strongly against the whole Trump tariff 51st state craziness. But he also outlined yesterday that historically and today, if you want to resist Trump and improve your own life, pharmacare, dentacare, rent control, et cetera, public housing, et cetera, you have a choice.
Okay, James, appreciate the call. Take care.
Great.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Bernie, hello.
Good morning, Todd. How you doing? Yeah, I guess you know who I'm voting for.
Yes, I sure do. I was going to say we got another NDP supporter.
I'm going to vote for Jagmeet Singh because I think right now you got the federal conservatives and the federal liberals are on the center right, and there's a vacuum on the left. And I think Jagmeet Singh, before this campaign's over, they're going to take their percentage back up to about 18 or 20% of the vote. I think when they have their debates and everything, people are going to see it, and they're going to take a list of things that were accomplished in this minority liberal government, which were pushed by the NDP and Jagmeet Singh, that ordinary people are going to drift away from giving either the Tories or the Liberals a government, and that the NDP is going to do all right in this election.
Bernie, what about the whole Trump issue and tariffs? Do you feel as though that might be more of a pressing issue?
The hell with Trump. The hell with Trump. Well, he got no right to interfere in our elections or anything like that. We're a sovereign country.
But Bernie, sorry to interrupt you. You can say to hell with Trump, but he's threatening our existence as a country and our sovereignty. Well, and let me ask you the question. So does that change your perception as to does that become the key ballot box question? That's the question that I want to ask you.
It is the key ballot box question, but that's what the media is putting out there. I think the key ballot box question is what kind of glue holds this country together, and it's our social network, our programs, and everything that makes the playing field level for all citizens. So I think that by the time the electorate gets through with this election, by the end date, that you'll see that the NDP numbers are going to come up significantly.
Okay, Bernie. Thanks, pal. Appreciate the call.
Okay, bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We got some open lines for you folks. Give us a call again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. A group of top energy executives calling on leaders of the 4 federal political parties to declare a Canadian energy crisis and use emergency powers to help speed up the development of key projects in the national interest. In a letter published recently under the headline Build Canada Now, the CEOs of 10 major oil and natural gas companies and 4 largest pipeline companies outlined their plan to strengthen Canadian economic sovereignty. They called for a simplification of regulation and a commitment to firm 6-month deadlines for project approvals. They also wanted an elimination of the federal government's cap on emissions and repeal of the federal carbon levy on large emitters and loan guarantees to help Indigenous co-investment opportunities. Joining us to discuss all of this is Janetta McKenzie, Oil and Gas Program Director at the Pembina Institute, Clean Energy Think Tank. Janetta, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
All right, so what's your response to all of this?
Yeah, there's a few things that I think are important to keep in mind with a letter like this. The premise is that building out a whole bunch of new oil and gas infrastructure is the really what we need to meet this moment. But that does begin to fall apart a little bit when you look at some of the details. When you look at the global marketplace, how oil and gas demand is likely to peak in the coming 5, 10, 15 years. When we look at trading partners like the EU and the UK, who have become very important to Canada in the last few months, who are committed to implementing carbon import standards based on the emissions intensity of imports that they bring in. We also have no announcements from Canada's oil and gas sector on the details of the projects they want to build, what these projects are, and how they and why they plan to build them out, how it will meet this moment and enhance economic resilience. This is the question we need to kind of ask ourselves at this moment. Do we want to stay in lockstep with largely the rest of the world, including some important trading partners like the EU and the UK, or do we want to follow the United States in a race to the bottom when it comes to environmental regulation? There's certainly room to improve our regulatory system, make it more efficient, but we need to be clear about what the trade-offs are and ensure that when we streamline, we're not just doing red tape reduction for the sake of red tape reduction.
All right, so I used the word crisis in the introduction, and it seems as though not letting a crisis go to waste is applicable here to some degree, right?
Yeah, I think this is obviously a big moment for Canada. We need to decide how we're going to meet the crisis and address tensions with the United States. And Canada has abundant natural resources, including oil and gas, but we also have the ability to generate a lot of clean, low-cost electricity that can help power our existing industries and new emerging sectors, our homes and buildings. And those really give us the preconditions to thrive in the emerging clean economy. So this moment is one where we should ask ourselves, where do we want to put our investment, our dollars? How do we want to improve the regulatory system to ensure that Canada is set up to thrive 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, as the rest of the world continues to move on, positioning themselves in a low-carbon energy economy.
All right, we often hear that Canada has when it comes to global emissions, something in the vicinity of 1% or something like that, and people will say, because of that, then we'll make no difference anyway, regardless of what we do. What's your response to that?
Yeah, well, I think that there's sort of two aspects to addressing emissions from climate change, right? One is that, yes, Canada does produce emissions. We're a low emitter, absolutely, but we, on a per capita, per person basis, are actually a very high emitter. So there is a responsibility there to do our part in reduce emissions. But even more than that, the world is repositioning their economies towards a low carbon towards becoming the low-carbon economy of the future. If Canada doesn't stay in lockstep with the rest of the world, we will lose out on the opportunities that are available as the world shifts to clean power, as the world thinks of new ways to power their homes and buildings and industries. So it's about reducing emissions, but it's also about being set up to thrive as the energy transition marches on globally.
Okay, you said the world is transitioning. The United States is not transitioning. China, and again, I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, but I'm just trying to cover all the bases here. We get India, China. I could go on with examples. So when you say the world, is that perhaps an exaggeration or not exactly accurate that the world is making this transition?
I don't think so. We're obviously seeing a United States that's pulling back very significantly from climate and low carbon energy. But around the rest of the world, you still see that the sort of snowball of the energy transition has gained momentum and is beginning to roll down the mountain of its own accord. We see, countries like China are obviously, they're huge countries. They have a lot of manufacturing, so they're very high emitters. But we're seeing significant investment from the Chinese in lower carbon energy, particularly in EVs. Across the world, clean energy production and adoption of low carbon solutions is continuing at pace. In 2024, global investment in clean energy was twice that of fossil fuels. And investment in electrified transport and renewable power grew by 11% from 2023. And these are trends that were well underway before the last presidential election, and we should expect them to continue, perhaps at a slower pace, especially in the United States. But again, these are trends that were well underway.
Right, you mentioned per capita, we're a bit of a laggard when it comes to emissions, but it's part of that a result of the the fact that we live in a cold climate and proximity that we have when it comes to people requiring to have some mode of transportation to get places? Can't always. It's not like the Netherlands or some of these other areas. Anything to any of that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we do live in a cold climate that requires a fair amount of heating, absolutely, and there is a lot of transport emissions in this country. But one of the biggest contributors to our per capita emissions are emissions from the production of oil and gas. We produce a lot of oil and gas, and it's a very emissions-intensive process, particularly in the Alberta oil sands, to extract and produce and process that oil and send it on for transport. And that really, oil and gas is Canada's highest emitting sector. It contributes almost a third of our national emissions, and we continue to see emissions go up in that sector. So it is really one of the keys to the high per capita emissions that we have here in Canada.
What are your thoughts on Danielle Smith?
Yeah, the government of Alberta has announced that it is dedicated to, attempting to double oil and gas production in Alberta. I think that there's a lot of opportunities that are being missed when it comes to investing in, again, those kind of preconditions for building out the low carbon economy. Alberta has the environment, has the context to be a real renewable power leader. And anything that can be done to enhance that and incentivize that, I think would be a better bet than doubling down on oil and gas infrastructure, which might become stranded in the next, 5, 10, 15 years.
Okay, stranded in what way?
In the sense where demand for our products globally will peak and begin to decline because, our trading partners around the world will be looking for ways to get off oil and gas and increase the diversity of their power sources, investing more in renewables. So as fewer trading partners buy less of our oil and gas, then we'll have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be dealt with and needs to be remediated and reclaimed in some way.
Okay, in Europe, from what I can gather, they're using a lot of Russian fuel right now. Is that true or no?
In the European Union?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a fair amount of Russian fuel being used in the EU, and the EU has developed a plan to, reduce the amount of Russian fuel they import to the greatest extent possible. Part of that is looking for new sources of oil, of particularly gas, not so much oil. But part of it is also accelerating their plans to deploy renewable and clean energy and clean electricity in order to, solve both the energy supply problem and the energy security problem by investing in energy sources that are domestic and closer to home.
Okay, Janetta, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, take care. Janetta McKenzie, Oil and Gas Program Director at the Pembina Institute, a clean energy think tank. I saw this story on the CBC website. A human rights lawyer blasts Nova Scotia government's efforts on poverty reduction. Vince Calderhead says the government is not doing enough to help the most vulnerable. Vince Calderhead will join us when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. We've got some open lines for you as well. Folks, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. I know who Jim's voting for.
You got that right. And guess what, Todd?
What?
I put a sign on the lawn. Remember I told you I wouldn't have a sign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met the candidate representation for the Liberals, so I had a good talk there. And, yeah, there's a sign up, and there's a Canadian flag. And I just want to emphasize that you asked the question about why Carney or why the Liberals or why whoever you're voting for. I'm going to predict, here we go, I'm going to predict that we have a large majority of Liberals that will be elected on the 28th. I say that because we're technically, I think you've said it in the past, and I think you were right dead on. We're at war with the United States administration, economically, of course. They've declared it on us. Our country is in dire state right now, and we don't know where we're going to go with the sovereignty thing, but I think the person to take it on, the quarterback for that, is Carney. I don't see Poilievre as a quarterback. I think he still wishes Justin Trudeau was around. Well, he hasn't. He's left the building, so he's got nothing else in his toolbox. So Carney's the guy to quarterback us out of this sovereignty thing, and I think that is the number one issue right across the country. That's what I'm seeing in the polls. That's what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. And I noticed around town, new Democrats that I personally know are wearing life jackets. So that probably tells you a lot about the new Democratic Party.
All right. So is there anything that Poilievre could do to impress you?
Yeah, leave. Just resign because you're going to get beat. You're never going to see Prime Minister. Poilievre will never, ever see the job of Prime Minister, and the Liberals will have a big majority, for sure. And if they don't, I'll bring you coffee and donuts. How's that?
Okay, pal. Sounds good. Okay. I'll hold you to it.
Oh, yeah, please do. Okay.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Jim. Thanks, bud. 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Ashley, hello in the wind tunnel. Hello, Ashley.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Not bad. I have to say, I love the last caller. I love the enthusiasm with the Liberal majority, that's for sure.
Okay. What would you like to get into?
I absolutely, I'm not as hopeful, but I think so. I think Pierre is an absolute joke. I think he represents everything that Trump represents. He stands there like a fool, and he just wants all of the accolades. He laughs he smiles to the camera, he points out children, he's got his own kids up on stage now. He's desperate. Not one time, and I watched the whole thing, did he even say Trump's name. I mean, what good is talking about social programs if we're questioning whether or not we're going to have a country at the end of it? Like, it's a joke. He's not even pretending to be serious.
Well, Ashley, look, I have concerns. I don't share your viewpoint or your comparison to Trump. I think Trump is way over the top and way more of an extremist than Pierre Poilievre. I don't agree with that connection personally.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I'm too extreme there. I don't think anyone can come close to being a Donald Trump, I'll be honest. But to represent Canada and get us out of this spot and to not even make mention of the biggest threat we have, while also just taking some talking points.
Yeah, that's true. Listen. I think Pierre Poilievre should be talking about Trump because to me that's the ballot box issue. I think that is number one right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. Take care. And look, if Pierre Poilievre is going to, if he's going to sidestep the real issue of the ballot box question of Donald Trump and tariffs in fear of irritating Donald Trump, I think that is the wrong approach. I think you have to address it head on. You absolutely have to get into it. 902-405-6000. Marilyn, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. I was just calling because I think people might be misinformed about the rebates on the Teslas. Because I was there 2 weeks ago with the intention of upgrading my now Tesla to a larger one. And they told me the rebates have been gone since January. So I don't think it has to do with all the drama that's going on in the States. And I do want to say that I think it's crazy that people are attacking someone who owns a Tesla. Because just because I drive a Tesla does not
I agree with you. That's not fair. I would never attack a Tesla owner, ever. I agree with that 100%.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people send me messages telling me to be careful.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's dead wrong.
It is.
It's dead wrong.
Yeah, especially in Canada. But I don't think the rebates have to do with that. Because when I went in, he told me there's no more rebates, and it's been since January.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, so you received negative feedback from people because you drive a Tesla. Is that correct? Is that what you told me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's just dead wrong.
Even if I did, I always like kind of like rattling the cage of people, and I'll make a post just to see, comments and back and forth. And I like the healthy banter and things like that. Yeah. But I do find that I actually deleted a lot of things because I find people have so much hate right now that there's no healthy banter anymore. Even like you could tell that lady just before me had a hate for Poilievre without a good reason, just because they think he's similar thinking of Trump.
Yeah. I guess so in fairness, there's plenty of hate to go around on both sides, Marilyn, I would say.
I'm sure. Yeah. I've just seen it on the other end.
Yeah, I listen, I think it's absolutely despicable that somebody would target a Tesla owner. They don't know the backstory. They don't know why you own that vehicle. You may not be a political person at all, and I think that's wrong. Anyway, thanks for the call.
Even if I was, though, it should be okay. Everybody's entitled to a different opinion.
That's right. Yeah, okay. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Listen, again, judging people because of the vehicle they drive, that's wrong in my opinion. I think that goes over the top. Hello, Ron.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. I'd just like to weigh in a little bit, if I can, on the tariffs.
Sure.
The consensus seems to be that they hurt everybody. The politicians will tell us that, that they're going to hurt the Americans as much as they hurt the Canadians. I don't think that's true, and I'll tell you why. Okay. Going back, let's just say prior to Trump even being elected, Canada imposed a pretty healthy dairy tariff on the United States. Mm-hmm. And at no point did they say that hurts us too.
Yeah, that's true because I suppose when you're talking about supply management, that's a different kettle of fish, though, altogether. Ron, in a way. No, not really. I mean, supply management, you could call it what you want, but a tariff's a tariff. Yeah, no, I'm not supporting it, by the way, but I'm just saying that supply management has been around for, I think, since the 70s. I don't know the exact history of it, but it's been around very, very... So this is nothing new, right?
Yeah, but why then does that not hurt Canadian dairy farmers? They tell us that the tariffs will hurt everybody, both sides of the border, but when Canada imposed it on the U.S., they don't say anything about...
Well, it's not about the dairy farmers as much as the consumers that I would say that it hurts because milk prices are way too high in this country, and we know that.
Well, yeah, but maybe you're missing my point.
Okay.
Maybe you're missing my point. Maybe I'm not making it well.
Okay.
But let's just take Ford in Ontario. He would say, look, these are hurting Americans as much as they're hurting us.
Yeah.
Put a full stop and a period. Well, then why did not the Canadian tariffs on dairy hurt Canada as much as it hurt the United States?
Well, I guess, and back to supply management, is that because the market is closed to American products. You can't even counter tariff for it.
I think the reason is because the tariffs do not hurt equally across the board. It just depends on the particular situation.
Okay, tell me what define what situation might be applicable.
Well, the problem, as I see it, with free trade is it's not really free. It's not free and fair across the board. One country will do things one way, another country will do something another way. One country will subsidize a certain product or control the supply. Another country won't. So you really don't have free trade across the board. But the point I'm trying to make is, if tariffs hurt everybody when they're imposed, why did they not hurt the Canadian dairy farmers when they were imposed?
Well, because I don't have a good answer for you, but I do know that when you talk to economists, you talk to people who are well versed in this, will tell you, especially when you've got a free trade agreement already ratified and in place, that when you start imposing tariffs in that environment and widespread tariffs across the board, arbitrary without any thought or rhyme or reason, then that is potentially not good for either economy.
Yeah, see, that's a different matter, though. I agree with you that there was a free trade, or there was at least a trade, agreement in place.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of what they're saying about the tariffs is rhetoric.
Okay, Ron, appreciate the call.
Okay.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. Energy sector CEOs call on Ottawa to use emergency powers to speed up key projects. We'll find out what the Pembina Institute thinks about this when we come back. I saw this story on the CBC website. A prominent Nova Scotia lawyer says it's borderline human rights violation that the provincial government is not doing more to lift income assistance recipients out of poverty. Vince Calderhead is that lawyer and joins us to talk about all this. Vince, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, so paint the picture. How bad is it out there when it comes to people and poverty and income?
Well, in general terms, it's completely atrocious, and it's worse for it's worse for single people living on their own. They're at about 30% to 35% of the poverty line. So in 2019, for the first time in Canadian history, the federal government established a poverty line for different levels across the country, and that gave us, for the first time, an opportunity to assess, according to the poverty line, how do social assistance incomes compare. So if you're looking at someone, a single person, either boarding or living on their own, it's about 34% of the poverty line. From there, a single person with a disability is somewhat better off. They're at 60%. A single parent, 57%. And a couple with two kids, 62%. So right around the 60% mark. And you need to know as well that Stats Canada, which kind of monitors and does the independent verification and so on of these poverty lines, says that at 75% of the poverty line, you're in deep poverty. And so looking at those figures of 34% and around 60%, you know that nobody in receipt of social assistance is doing okay.
How do we compare to other provinces?
The last going off, New Brunswick was the worst, and Nova Scotia was second from the bottom. So it's a very dubious distinction.
Indeed. Okay. In the story, Opportunities in Social Development Minister Scott Armstrong told reporters that he has meetings planned with department employees and partners around the province after the current legislature wraps up. He expects income assistance rates to be a topic of conversation, but he also said the indexing of rates is the current budget as notable. I mean, indexing poverty that's not going to get it done, not even close, right?
No. All it means to index the rates, which came in last year, all that does is prevent people from slipping deeper into poverty. Yeah. That's all it does. Does it improve their standard of living? Not 1 cent.
Right.
So that in itself is nothing. And so for the minister then to go on and say, in the face of these unchallenged statistics about the appalling level of social assistance rates in Nova Scotia, for him to say, well, he's going to talk to people about it, I mean, that's completely disheartening, and I can imagine why people in receipt of assistance are just despairing at this point.
All right, so what, in your opinion, needs to happen here? What would you, if you were in charge, what would things look like?
I mean, in really broad terms, Canada needs, and Nova Scotia along with it, need to take this seriously and need to say, in this day and age, there's no reason why people in Canada, such an affluent country, need to be living in poverty. Absolutely no reason whatsoever when you consider the tax breaks for huge companies, the subsidization of the oil industry, and so on and so forth. There's absolutely no reason anyone needs to be living in poverty. And so the rates need to be brought up to the poverty line. In the short term, there are these, and I mentioned to the Public Bills Committee, the benefits like the affordable living tax credit. I mean, that hasn't been increased since 2011. That's 14 years ago. The poverty reduction credit hasn't been increased in 7 years. So in an era where there's been high inflation and people in receipt of income crucially rely on those, they need to be, it shows that the province is taking things seriously when it revisits the levels of income assistance and these various tax benefits. So it could do that. And then what I also said, the Public Bills Committee, they should make a recommendation to government that it take seriously a private member's bill, which in this session said, look, let's set up a pilot project of increasing rates of social assistance to the poverty line over a course of 4 years and compare that and to the experience of other people. And the point is not just that people would be living in a bit more dignity, but that the available research all shows that province will actually save money for healthcare expenditures, justice system expenditures, education outcomes. All of these would benefit. And so sometimes people say, look, in a poor province like Nova Scotia, we can't afford not to take these steps because we're spending the money one way or the other. We're spending it on healthcare system, doctors' visits, all those kinds of things are reduced, the evidence shows, when you treat people with a measure of dignity.
Okay, Minister Armstrong also said that his goal is to have fewer people on income assistance. He wants to ensure that people who can work receive the support they need to return to the workforce. So this is something I think it's our responsibility, my responsibility, particular as a minister. What's your response to that, Vince?
Well, I mean, that's nothing new. They've been encouraging people, and there's all kinds of measures supporting people to try to obtain employment. But that on its own is not going to do it. Over 70% of the single people in receipt of assistance or of social assistance cases are people with a disability. So saying, well, just go and get a job. I mean, this sounds like something we heard in the 60s and 70s, just find work. Yeah, that's great if you're able to work and if there are supports available to allow you to return to work. But rather than kind of blame the victim here, I think the minister needs to, with an open mind, look at some of these measures to finally comply with the government's human rights obligations and treat people with dignity.
Yeah, it's pretty evident that over the next 3 or 4 years that this is not going. I shouldn't say it's pretty evident. In my opinion, it's evident that this is not going to get much of a priority. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, at a minimum, I think the kinds of submissions that the Public Bills Committee and others received from us amount to human rights monitoring, so that the public and others, in other provinces and so on, can have a very, very clearly quantified indication of where human rights stands in this province. So we got to keep pushing. That's all I can say. And I think, frankly, it's incumbent on Nova Scotians to say, look, this is happening in my name, and we got to put our foot down.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Vince, listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, well, thanks for calling me.
All right, take care. Vince Calderhead, a prominent Nova Scotia lawyer, and I think you make some valid points. And it's hard to argue when you look at the data and the statistics that we were referencing during our chat. Small business confidence plummets to an all-time low as U.S. Canada trade war ramps up. We'll discuss this when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, joining me here in studio is Duncan Robertson, Director, Legislative Affairs, Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Atlantic. Duncan, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I want to talk to you about small business and confidence, but we were chatting about campaign promises, and there'll be a lot over the next few weeks, as we well know. One today on the Confederation Bridge was pretty interesting, eh?
Yes, no, we saw the Conservative Party come out saying that they would eliminate it earlier, the Liberals as well. So to see two major parties announce that is significant. It's something that our members have been fighting for. We have a petition going on right now on that issue. So it's good news. Again, just have to follow through, whoever forms government.
Yeah, that's right. What about interprovincial trade? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that is definitely something that we're looking for during this election. Some, when it becomes more uncertain to do work, south of the border, ensuring that's more certain east and west is, of course, very important. We see here in Nova Scotia, our province really being a leader, introducing legislation this sitting to, reduce trade barriers for goods and services, enhance labor mobility. Other provinces joining suit, BC tabling legislation as well. So we're leading that way. And now it's time to look at the federal side of things, seeing what the other parties are kind of putting forward to how they're going to reduce the internal trade barriers.
Okay, there's nothing's perfect though, right? There's no perfect scenario. You're going to have people who emerge when interprovincial trade is looked at, who feel as though they weren't consulted with, and that was the case here in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah, that was the case. I was at those committee meetings too. Of course, there were some concerns from regulatory colleges around public safety, and I think amendments were tabled late last week to kind of mitigate that, which is good. But this is really, in terms of legislation, really the biggest step since the signing of the CFTA, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement in 2017. 9 in 10 of our members say it's a priority to reduce internal trade barriers, and this can really help the current uncertainty that we're facing right now.
How far can it go, though, in replicating losing free trade with the United States if, in fact, this happens?
Well, right now there's studies, particularly from the International Monetary Fund, that say that the current trade barriers we face in our country interprovincially add around a 21% tariff to ourselves.
Wow.
So it could mitigate a good part, but again, going to zero is significant and would take a long time to do, but we're seeing real momentum finally. Too often it's been a couple lines in a news release, but now we're seeing provinces step up, particularly following Nova Scotia's lead, which is great to see, and hopefully we can really get some really good changes happening in the next short term.
Okay, let's talk about small business confidence in general, and how do you measure it? To talk about your barometer.
Yeah. So each month we release the monthly business barometer, which is an index and measures the confidence levels of our members in the short term being 3 months and long term being 12 months. And very shockingly, this month's release, we found really abysmal levels in the long term, the lowest readings in the long term that we've seen, period, lower than during the pandemic, lower during the 08-09 crisis, and even lower during the 9/11. So, this is significant, and it's a clear warning sign to policymakers at all orders of government that action needs to be taken right now.
Okay, what's action look like?
Well, there's several different aspects. When we look at the federal government, of course, there's an election going on. We've put forward our small business platform with 13 recommendations. I won't list all of them, but there's things like reducing internal trade barriers, reducing the federal small business tax rate. We've seen some movement here in Nova Scotia. We'd like to see that federally. Reducing red tape, things like that. So these are all instances where parties could put forward some solutions and really help small businesses at the federal level. Provincially, of course, we're still looking at the costs around payroll taxes, the fuel tax as well as again, being leaders on internal trade, ensuring that we're encouraging people to buy local, but also that government is doing their part at buying local as well.
All right, what are your thoughts on governments canceling contracts with U.S. companies, and if potentially that might cost more money?
Well, look, I think it's important, of course, to focus on the local businesses and ensuring that they're doing local. I would give credit to the province. They have amended some of their requirements for how they purchase products from local businesses, giving them an advantage on procurement contracts is a good sign, and we're hearing that it's good from our members. So that's something I think is a really good story and something that we should highlight as well.
I would think for small business owners, though, it's got to be at some point you just have to say we need a break, right? Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the pandemic, and look, it's just at some point you just have to say enough's enough, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I was at Halifax Council last week, and I said, look, the pandemic, high inflation, current tariff situation, like small businesses haven't been given a break, and they need to see some relief that's much needed, particularly now when 7 in 10 of our members saying that the tariff situation is causing exceptional uncertainty. If you want to succeed as a business, that's predicated on being able to look into the future. So where all orders of government can really focus on is ensuring that they're reducing costs, that they're really being mindful of small businesses, and all orders of government can do that. It's not just on one or the other.
All right, so reducing taxation, and this is something we've talked about forever. Why not just get it done?
Yeah, look, I mean, when we look at Nova Scotia, they got it done they reduced the small business tax rate by 1%. But when we look at federally, the small business tax rate is something around like 8 or 9%, which is significant. Yeah. So there is some need for the province or the federal government to reduce that rate here in the province. Again, looking at WCB premiums, we pay the highest in the country, while workers receive some of the lowest benefits. So that needs to be addressed. Municipally, of course, property taxes, that's a concern. Around 6 in 10 of our members say that that's their top municipal concern. So it's good to see Halifax, propose, keeping their tax rate increases flat. But we want to see other municipalities, CBRM, others, to really step up. So again, it's on all orders of government to look at where they're adding costs in terms of taxation or fees and remove or eliminate whenever possible.
How concerning is it that some business owners might look south of the border and just say, you know what, I'm going to throw in the towel, I'm just going to head south?
No, it is concerning. And I mean, particularly when we look at, in Canada, interprovincial trade, 4 in 10 say it's a barrier. And for too many, they say it's often easier to do work south of the border than it is east to west. So it is a concern that, if it does become too costly to operate your deal with, south of the border from Canada, that there will be some movement. And that's a concern. And I think it is, again, another warning sign that we as a country have to look at how we can add certainty in Canada, ensure that we're not, impacting trade in Canada. And hopefully we can access some of that. There's another study that says if we removed all internal trade barriers, we could add $200 billion to our economy, which again is significant and would help mitigate some of this impact that we're seeing and perhaps driving some south of the border.
All right. And look, we're in election season. We know that. And politicians are going to promise everything, right? So how do business owners kind of wade through all of that and kind of delineate who means business and who doesn't, pun intended?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And I think it's really where we as an organization have a role to play. We right now, if you go to cfib.ca/elections, we're tracking their promises. So when they announce something, we're holding their feet to the fire. So when the election's over, we're at their door saying, you promised this, we need action, we need to see it. And that's really what a lot of organizations, particularly that ours, play a role, as well as voters, ensuring if you're a small business owner, you're looking at who's really making the most promises or the best promises or the best solutions to small businesses, and you're kind of voting with your feet that way as well is important. Yeah.
Does CFIB have a stance on natural resource development?
That's a good question. I know that's been a hot topic here in Nova Scotia. We are kind of considering where we can survey on in our members, but I think it is important that government is focusing on, improving our overall productivity in our economy. Between 2020 and I believe it was 2023, we actually saw a 5% decrease in productivity, and natural resources are one of these very high productivity sectors. So that's significant. And particularly in our rural areas, a lot of this kind of development would be in rural Nova Scotia and would help some of our rural businesses build as well. So it's significant. But again, we are serving our members, so we can't say one way or the other, but we really want to ensure that the province, the federal government, the municipalities are really focusing on bringing forward solutions on how we can really enhance our business environment and our economy. It's very, very important.
How is productivity measured? May seem like a dumb question, but how do you measure that?
Yes. So I believe it is, the GDP per capita per hour, I believe.
Yeah.
So it is how much, you're getting out of a worker in terms of that. So it is significant. And of course, when we see that lower, it means again that our economy really has some there need to be some real solutions to improve that. And I think that's something that we'll hear hopefully in the upcoming federal election, as that is definitely a focus.
Okay, so when it comes to the Nova Scotia being the highest tax jurisdiction, I think I've heard it in North America. Is that true?
Yeah, I can't say in North America, but yes, I have heard many say that is the highest in Canada, and that is definitely a concern, particularly when we think of consumer spending, things like that. That's definitely significant.
Yeah.
And, gladly, we saw a reduction in the small business tax rate. We would like to see further going forward. But yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed for sure.
All right, so I guess the reason why I bring it up is that what would motivate some? I can see why people who are already here might say, well, I'll deal with that because they love Nova Scotia. They have roots here. They have their business here. But a brand new startup business, small business, and they're looking and they can go anywhere. I shouldn't say anywhere, but basically anywhere. I would think that would be a huge deterrent. Would it not be?
Yeah, when we look at our overall tax environment, we do need to see, the impact it has on competition, on where we're really incentivizing businesses to start up and grow. I think when we look across Canada now, Nova Scotia will have the third lowest small business tax rate in Canada, which would, provide some incentive that way. We would like to see other kind of taxation around fuel taxes, property taxes, but again, payroll taxes, again, that WCB. I was speaking to a member of the legislature last week who is around Amherst. I'm sure you can imagine who that is, but we were discussing, and they said, we're hearing from businesses who say, rather than start up in Nova Scotia, we're going to New Brunswick because the payroll costs are lower and the payroll taxes are lower. So that's something to consider when we think of WCB premiums, not to get too much in the weeds, but really ensuring that, the government looks at all costs, all taxes, and really sees that as a way to improve competition, improve, that incentive to start a business in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, workers' comp you're talking about, of
yes,
course,
exactly.
WCB, So when it comes to, I guess, weathering this storm, do you think that? What are your thoughts on business owners' resolve in general to weather this storm that we're in right now?
Yeah, business owners are definitely resilient. They will do what it takes to keep their businesses open. They're serving our communities. It's important too to consider as consumers we have a role to play as well, ensuring that we are also helping them through that storm and ensure that I say it again and again, but when we shop at a small business, 66 cents of every dollar spent at a small business stays in that local community. So there's economic development incentives there to ensure that we're building our overall local communities. And with that threat of tariffs south of the border and the overall uncertainty, it's now important more than ever that we're choosing local, that we're looking local to help those small businesses through that storm.
Indeed. Duncan, I appreciate your time. Thanks for your insight as always, my friend.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Duncan Robertson with Legislative Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business Atlantic. Canada should raise the retirement age to 67 to address labor shortages. According to a report, we'll find out what Bill Van Gorder thinks about all this when we come back. All right, this story recently on the CFIB website. First, let's see. A new report by C.D. Howe Institute suggests Canada should gradually raise the normal retirement age to 67 in order to address labor shortages and help sustain pension systems. The public policy think tank based out of Toronto says the change would put Canada in line with successful international models. Joining us to discuss all of this is Bill Van Gorder with CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons. Bill, thanks for joining the show.
Happy to be here, Todd.
All right, so here we go. Somebody else wants us to work longer, eh?
Well, somebody else wants to regulate us to decide when we should stop working, and seniors deserve the right to decide when to retire. Retirement age shouldn't be regulated at all. The 65-year age was invented by Otto von Bismarck 2 centuries ago to try to get rid of some generals, and it's hung on ever since. That's not the question. We are living longer. We're living healthier lives. And there's a growing recognition of the benefits of seniors in the workforce. So let's look at the overall situation, not pick some number that doesn't mean really anything to anybody.
Well, the number means something if you want to collect OAS, right?
Well, it does, and that's why we have to make sure. I mean, there are people, many older adults, they're healthy, they're capable, they're eager to continue to contribute. There are others, even those who are under the age of 65 or 67, who are not healthy, have had jobs that have really worked hard on their bodies all their lives, and they need the support and help so they can stop working now. It needs to be directed to the individual, not to some imaginary age. And that's why CARP is willing to say, look, we've got to sit down and look at the entire situation with older adults, and how do we make sure everybody is looked after the way they should be looked after, and that people who want to continue to work can continue to do so and not also be penalized, because there's many things within our system now that penalizes people who are working. Look at having to cash in your RIFs at the age of 71, whether you want to or not, even if you're still working. The whole thing needs to be renegotiated.
Okay, so is this on the front burner or the back burner, or any burner at all?
It's been very much on our radar at CARP, trying to take the onus out of the term retirement and make sure that people are able to keep working as long as they want to, and when they can't anymore for health reasons or any other reasons, they're able to leave the workforce and be comfortable in doing that and still live a quality of life that we all aspire to as we get older.
Okay, so when it comes to pushing back OAS, we know Stephen Harper attempted this, but a lot of blowback, a lot of pushback, and he reverted that back to 65. What are your thoughts on moving the age of OAS?
Well, the problem with the OAS is that it's not sufficient in amount now for the people who really need it. And what we need to look at is what is the amount of money that people at their older ages, what's the amount of money that they need to be able to continue to live the kind of life that they deserve. So it's not a matter of moving age as much as is looking at the amount and looking at how that might be done. Maybe it needs to be done by having a gradual increase. Maybe it has to be focused more on income levels. You know, one of the biggest problems we have in the way we treat everyone, but especially seniors, is what we consider low income. And to say now, as we do, that somebody who's just has income just in the high 20s, $28,000, $29,000 a year, that somehow once you're above that amount, you're living comfortably and don't need extra help. It's ridiculous in these days with rising prices and rising costs. So we have to look at the basis that those decisions are made on, not just the age that they happen at.
Okay, the combination of OAS and CPP at one time, that would put you somewhat in the vicinity of having enough to live on, probably with the supplement, depending on your living circumstance. But I would think that most people now, that doesn't even come close, that combination of those would it?
It doesn't even come close. It probably has to be double that to start to be and that's the problem we have to look at. That's why just tinkering with individual things like retirement age or OAS ages isn't going to solve the problem. We have to we've been using the term renegotiate because there are people who seem to want to just make these drastic steps in certain areas and not understand the total picture. It really has to be looked at. We can't say, as a government official said to me not too long ago, well, we've got to keep doing it because that's the way we've always done it. No, that can't be the way we've always done it. We've got to start changing, because the other part of it is we have to have in place methods to allow people who want to continue to work to contribute to the economy. One of the problems right now that keeps people from going back to work or doing extra work is it puts them over an income level, so the money gets taxed back, and they hardly make anything new at all. So why go back to work? That has to be looked at if we really want to encourage older people to stay in the workforce, which we're told we really need these days.
Okay, of course, we're day one or day two of a federal election. Does CARP have a vested interest? Obviously, you would, who you represent. But CARP doesn't endorse anybody, does it?
No, we don't endorse anyone. I can tell you, though, we just did a survey last month at our members, and this was before Mr. Carney was in place. So, but I did a survey and asked people what their intentions were in voting, and I can tell you it was closer than I've ever seen it before in our surveys right across the country, and the undecided was 3 times as much as it normally is. And the other interesting thing, just for us here in Atlantic Canada, was among our, and this will upset some people to hear, I'm sure, is that older Canadians in Atlantic Canada were saying they were still leaning very hard on the Liberal side. It's going to be very interesting for us to see. We are going to do a quick survey for a week next week and ask again to see if that's changed. But what that tells me from our experience of years of watching different elections is this one is going to be really, really close. And don't depend on seniors to vote the way they always have just because that's the way they've done it. There's a lot of movement in the older group in terms of both directions, how they're going to vote this time.
Right. And how do seniors traditionally vote? Conservative, or what do the demographics usually indicate?
Traditionally, a little more to the right than to the left, yes.
Right. Okay. And you're saying don't count on that this time?
don't count on that this time. There's a lot of movement, a lot of indecision. But the one thing we do know is that now these are the people that answered the survey, so that's probably one of the reasons. But almost 100% of them said they plan to vote in this upcoming election.
Wow, there you go. Okay, Bill, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Todd.
All right, take care. Bill Van Gorder, chief, with the Canadian Association of Retired Persons. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much, as always. And thanks to Vanessa Vandeness as well on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job, as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.